Hey there, YouTubers. All right, so we've got this awesome Aorus Z690i ultralight motherboard. Pretty cool little motherboard. It does have some shortcomings here and there. PCIe 3.0, only a 1x8, all that good stuff, right? It does have DDR5 RAM. Currently, I don't believe it supports the fastest speed DDR5 RAM, but that's another story. In this video, folks, I'm going to show you the bare minimums you need to get this thing to boot to BIOS. The rest of the stuff, kind of depending on what you do, whether you go Windows 10, Windows 11, what case you hook this up to. We're not going to install it in the case in this video. I just want to show you how to ensure that you get to BIOS, because once you can get it to BIOS, the rest of the stuff is easy, all right? Now, what do we need to do this? Well, real quick overview. Got to put a CPU in. Got to put a CPU cooler in. We're only going to put one stick of RAM in, right? What kind are we going to use? Well, if you're watching this for the DDR5 version, hey, you got to put DDR5 RAM in it. If you're watching this for DDR4, make sure you're putting DDR4 RAM. Make sure it's compatible RAM too. That is highly important. Check the manufacturer's website. I believe I've made a video on this one. Hopefully I'll put a link down below where you can go in and verify that your RAM is compatible before you get started with this. Because if your RAM's not compatible, it's not going to work. You're going to end up looking at a black screen. This thing you might get some lights to turn on, but other than that, folks, you are not going to have things working like you planned. So, 24-pin power connector, we have to make that connection. 1x8 CPU power connector, we need that. We've got to be able to, so we get one stick of RAM, that, blah, blah, blah. If we're using integrated graphics, we'll need an HDMI or DisplayPort over on this side. And then finally, folks, we need something to turn this on. Now, two ways to do it. People always remind me, you don't need that power switch, right? Well, your case is going to have something very similar to this. If you were to take your case apart and rip this thing out, this is basically what you're going to see in there. So we'll use a power switch. We'll connect that to the front panel. But if you don't have that, don't sweat. Certain types of flathead screwdrivers work. You can even, if you find the right Phillips head, you'll get that to work. Might even get a butter knife to work, for all I know. All right, let's get into this. So, any 12th gen CPU is compatible with this, right? In this case, we're just going to use the one I have sitting around. We're not even going to worry about which one that is. We're just going to put it in there. So eventually this will be compatible with 13 gen. Now, if you were looking at your CPU, reading the text left to right, you want to the left to have the I/O shield, okay? That's one way to do this. If you look close enough at the cutouts in this, there's two in the top, two in the bottom. These are different spacing, so you'll want to make sure that is lined up, right? The triangle here matches up with, there's one on your plastic cover. So at least three ways that you could orient this thing and ensure that it goes in correctly. Now, always a good idea, folks, honestly, to try and do this with two hands and get it in there. Now, last thing you want to do is not force this thing in, okay? If it didn't go in, pick it up, take it back out, try again, all right? Make sure you got it lined up right. Now, this is in good, and you can actually, if you feel across here, the board itself and the plastic perimeter, we'll call it, they should feel flush, and they do, all right? Now, as I push this down, eventually the plastic's going to pop off, all right? Boom. Not quite like the LGA 1151. What I do, though, it doesn't say this in directions, I will take a look and make sure everything's good. Now, I'm going to come in, put my finger here, and this takes some force to get this thing in there, and boom. All right, so now we got a CPU in. Now, if you are doing a locked processor, and you'll have one of these CPU coolers. If it is a new one, you'll have thermal paste on the bottom. Okay, in this case, I do not have thermal paste because I've used this in a crap ton of videos on the channel. So we got to put some thermal paste on there. Depending on the cooler, this is a circular one, so me putting, you know, daubs all over the place is not going to do a whole lot. So we'll do one decent size in the middle. Maybe a little. Actually, I didn't do nothing, right? So, just trying to get thermal paste off there. All right. Now, on this motherboard, your CPU connector's back here. All right. I'm going to go ahead and connect that. You don't have to do it. You can do it after you put this thing in, but I just want to know where my cable's at. All right. So I could come in here, come back and do, you know, tie this off. You know, if you come in like this, it's probably going to get in the way of some things. So I am gonna go in this direction. Now, unlike some motherboards, this one's actually floating off of my hard surface. A lot of times, folks, I will tell you all to make sure you don't do this on a hard surface, because why is that? Well, these are cheap plastic little pegs, and you can break them pretty darn easy. And basically, your CPU cooler is not going to work very good. All right, so we need light looking at a different direction. And so, potentially not the best CPU cooler for this case, but we're going to see if we can get it to work. So we may, folks, we may have something blocking us. Yeah, we're not sitting flush, are we? You see that? So this CPU cooler is a bust. Wow. All right. Good to know that. You know, obviously you can try stuff out in the beginning, and then it turns out to be a failure. Let's see if we can get a Noctua in here, which would be kind of ridiculous to use it, but let's try it. Another CPU cooler is not going to work. The Noctua NHU12S, or the Redux version. This is a bust as well. Now, potentially the Vetroo V5, which is, you know, also kind of a ridiculously sized CPU cooler. It looks like it may actually fit in here, so we're gonna go ahead and try it. So sadly, I can't remember which one of these back plates is the one that goes with this. Ideally, you know, you would take the tape off. We'll try this one. Actually, we're not going to try that one. We're going to try the other one. Because it actually has a rectangular shape to avoid this thing. Now, the thing that stinks here is that this back plate is going to fall because there's a gap and I don't have the tape. So I'm going to prop it up a little bit. Now, this may or may not work. I hate wasting more thermal paste, but that's the way it's going to go, folks. That's the way it's going to go. Alright, so in this one, we're going to spread it out a little bit. And then we want this thing to blow air this way. So this thing is pretty much symmetrical about this axis. So we're going to go ahead and plop it in here. And hope this works, because I don't know what I'm going to do if this one doesn't work, folks. We don't do a lot of ITX motherboards on the channel, so we're not really set up for CPU coolers for it. And so while this Vetroo is was decent for 10th and 11th gen. And honestly, one of my more popular videos that I made. It's really not up to the tasking for the higher end 12th gens lock CPUs. Good enough for like an i5 12400, 12500, 12600. I wouldn't really combine it with the 12700 or the i9 12900 as I've done. It has some shortcomings there for benchmarks. Alright, so assuming this thing's sitting flush, folks, and these screws are actually going in, and we'll know in a little bit. So we got 2 screws in, almost all the way. Let's get these in. And boom. Now we need a, well, eventually we need to put the CPU fan in. Let's put the RAM in while we can, while it's easy. And my little prop out of the way. So we're going to pick this first RAM slot. Now, these actually look pretty much the same distance, which I know they're not. And if I remember correctly, text is always usually facing the CPU, right? So even though they look pretty much the same. Now we should get a double click. Maybe, maybe not. Wow, that's scary. This is DDR5. This is DDR5 motherboard. Huh. I don't know why it didn't click, folks. Almost feels like it doesn't want to go in there. So we got one side clicking. There we go. Okay. Scary. There's our RAM. Let's go get our CPU fan now. So while I like the Vetroo for the most part, I gotta tell you, I don't like the fans themselves. These brackets are terrible. And getting them to stay on here, unlike the Noctua ones, is quite a pain in the butt. And that one just popped off the back. So that, I mean, that's good, right? You can get one in. Shouldn't have to do it this way though. The bracket should stay on and not pop off like it did. And then voila. So for some reason it's not sitting like it should, but so this is RGB or ARGB. I'm only going to cook up the 4-pin. I don't want to mess with that for now. Just one little thing, like we don't want to wonder why that's not working, right? All right, we got RAM. And we do have integrated graphics on this. So we need our 24-pin power connector. That's got to go in here. Then we need our 8-pin CPU power connector. Get this to work. And hopefully we won't end up with any cables in our CPU fan, right? We'll avoid that. So I'll put this on the other side of this. Then our front panels are over here. So, like I had said, we can attach, these should be the front panels. we can use either a flathead or we can use this thing. And if this is like all the other ones, top row, 3rd and 4th pins over is where our power switch needs to go. Okay. Now, if you have multiple graphics cards at your house, using one that, you know, simple like this, doesn't have a PCIe 6 or 8 or two 6s, 2 8s, whatever, 8 and a 6, you know, is probably the way to go. If I didn't have integrated graphics, I would plug this into the PCIe, and I would use either DisplayPort or HDMI, or if you have DVI. Right, so we're not going to actually do that in this video. Now we will grab a display cable and hook that up. So you will need keyboard and mouse, right? At least if you really want to get into the BIOS, because it may just tell you that you can't get in unless you hook one up. HDMI in there, so we've got that connection made. I need to get this out of the way. Now what we won't show off camera, I'll eventually plug the power supply in. Right now it's not plugged in. And there's a switch on the power supply. You want to make sure the line is pressed in when right before you go to power this up. Right now it should be where the zero is showing, or it's like a 1 and a 0, right? So right now the 0 should be pressed down. Let us grab one more thing. So this thing is ready to go. I am now plugging into the wall. And then this is what I was talking about. So before you plugged it in, should have been there. Now we're ready to go, okay? If all works out, folks, we should see those fan blades spinning. Power switch. And so far nothing. Why nothing? Is the front panels different? Alright, let's double check our connections. We should be solid, folks. Unless the power supply is bad. Alright, I'll try a different switch. Might have to get my glasses out. I may have hooked up the power switch to the wrong spot. Okay, so we are in the wrong spot for the power switch. Oops. Sorry, folks. There's an extra couple pins next to it. Alright. Fire in the hole. Still nothing. That's not good. So, occasionally I have problems with the power supply. I'm not sure if that really is a problem, but we're going to switch it out real quick. Alright, so I got a EVGA 850GQ power supply now. Unplugged from the wall. Just make sure we get solid connections. And I had bought that power supply off eBay, and it started making noises, and then it started working again without noise. Somewhere in there though, I sent the guy a video of what was going on, and he gave me a refund, the whole thing. And occasionally I've used it, and now it looks like it might be back to not working right, so who knows. Let's see, so maybe we won't use that one anymore. Now the directions are a little confusing. Usually it's the second row, 3rd and 4th pins. Looking at the directions, folks, if we look at it, and I'll show you this just so you don't think I'm losing my mind. The way that is oriented almost makes it seem like the power switch is this bottom. Let's see. So if we're looking at, if we put this paper the way it is, these are the power switches. Or this is the power switch down here. So I may have potentially plugged this in the wrong spot. That's possible. We do things like that. All right. Now I'm going to plug this in. And let's see if it works. Boom. So yeah, it was just a matter of the directions. You got to look at the manual, folks. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. I mean, I have hundreds of motherboards come through here, and we have not had that problem. So let me just on this end see if it's actually in BIOS. If it's not, then we'll go back to troubleshooting. We did not hook up our mouse or our keyboard like I told you we should. And voila. So we're good, folks. It is actually booting up right now, which is weird that it's not already in there. But hey, I hope this helped. Look at that pretty little RGB stuff going on. I might upgrade my wife's computer. This is a sharp motherboard. I hate to not keep this one for a while. All right, but there you go. Thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.